nome del Padre, Figliolo, Spirito Santo. Amen.
Such a separation.
Thank you all for being here. So happy to see so many people here today. So what I'm going to talk about today, the title of my talk is When the Way Seems Long, What to Do When Discouraged. Okay, I had a miraculous week. I want everybody to know that. I all kinds of things happened this week to me that I didn't know how were going to happen. I had transformations and manifestations and realizations. I got all my bookkeeping done for the year 2019, not 2020, 2019, which is very complicated. And that meant I could do my taxes. And I was really in a time crunch because my taxes had to be done by October 15th. I'd taken an extension, and I had all kinds of thoughts that said I was not going to be able to complete this. And I did complete it. And I was only in tears 3 times. So it was so frustrating at times, but I completed it. Okay, as you know, if you're on the healing team, we've been praying about the situation at the Community Miracle Center with an office staff, because I lost both of my staff people within a month. And the second one was very unexpected. And I really just didn't know what to do, but put it on the healing list. And this week, one of our members and person on the healing list, Natalie, she started working at the office. So Friday was her first day in the office, and I didn't have to do anything to look for anybody. She approached us when she saw it on the healing list. She thought I'd like to have that job. And so, she contacted me, and so Natalie started working as my new office administrator, which is tremendous. Very skilled. So I'm very happy about that. Another amazing thing is that the World Health Organization released a statement that actually agreed with me, with things that I had said right at the start of the pandemic, right at the end of March and the beginning of April. I talked about how these shelter-in-place guidelines were actually going to really hurt minorities and poor people. And this week, Dr. Nabarro made a big public statement for the World Health Organization. And he said this: it seems that we may well have a doubling of world poverty by next year. We may have at least a doubling of child malnutrition. Lockdowns just have one consequence that you must never, ever belittle. And that is making poor people an awful lot poorer. We, the World Health Organization, do not advocate lockdowns as the primary means of control of this virus. And so we really do appeal to all the world leaders. Stop using lockdown as your primary control method. So World Health Organization is now out really publicly that sheltering in place, locking down businesses and economies has a dire side effect. And it's very dire with poor people and minorities. And this is exactly what I said in March and April, that these policies were actually racist. They were a hidden form of racism because they were going to affect minorities worse than anybody else. So even in the midst of all of this, and the World Health Organization agreeing with me, getting a new office worker, getting my bookkeeping done, getting my taxes done, I found myself getting strangely discouraged and feeling low. A couple things triggered it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. One is I heard more and more about how some states were just making no effort to, end certain shelter-in-place guidelines and ending certain restrictions and letting churches meet again and things of that nature. The continual degrading, in my mind, of what seems to be the world of the rule of law and our constitutional rights being denied and freedom of religion being denied and our ability to publicly assemble being denied. And it just began, my mind started spinning with that and it brought me down. And I also watched some of these governors talk, and as I said, and I've said a couple of times, power is very, very seductive. And a lot of governors and mayors are showing no signs of ever letting go of the emergency powers that they have assumed. And, when does the quote emergency end? And I talked about this once before. Emergency definition: a serious, unexpected, and often dangerous situation requiring immediate action. So emergencies are temporary by definition. They don't last 7 months or a year or 2 years or an indefinite period of time by definition. Then they are no longer emergencies. And we have a rule of law. We have ways that laws are developed, through a legislative process and through a legislative body. And when you just have the executives, the governors, the mayors, making what account to be laws, then the rule of law has degraded, and we actually have, tyranny, and we have monarchs instead of elected officials. And this began to work with me and bother me. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked briefly about the Catholic Church in San Francisco staging some demonstrations against this. So that was the Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone. He did a large demonstration in downtown San Francisco, calling for the end of the lockdowns and the end, letting churches open in a less restricted way. Why did churches have more restrictions than other businesses? That was his whole thing. But I also heard this week that a Catholic priest named Father Trevor Berthia, who is a priest in Kern County, which is the county where Bakersfield is, but he oversees mission churches in several other counties. So Kern, San Bernardino, Los Angeles, and San Diego. He's actually suing the governor. And he's suing all of those counties for what he considers to be very restrictive policies that are denying people their First Amendment rights. His lawsuit is pretty sweeping in how it's focused. And in all my life, I have never seen the Catholic Church do anything like this. So in my mind, I know things are pretty dire when I see Catholic priests suing the government. Usually the Catholic Church is pretty much, in bed with the government, but to see them actually suing the government like this is a big deal. So that was encouraging. I was glad to see that actually happened. I actually believe that this is all going to be settled in the courts. It already has been settled in Pennsylvania and I believe Michigan, who have overturned all their governor's emergency COVID-19 restrictions, calling them unconstitutional. So this has already happened in a couple other states. And my guess is it will continue to happen because I don't really see the governors and the mayors letting go of their power voluntarily. And that seemed to be a sad state of affairs. Well, some of them have, but certainly many of them have not. I was also discouraged or getting discouraged or got a little spin of discouragement going on by what I saw some long-term A Course in Miracles students saying and doing. And what I saw them saying and doing was talking about sickness as if it was real. Talking about how sickness is spread, talking about the reality of disease. And I know it's all logical, but those are the laws of sickness. And we're not supposed to be worshiping the God of sickness. We're A Course in Miracles students. It says, don't worship the God of sickness. And all of those laws about how disease spread, they're all the laws of sickness that we believe the God of sickness has decreed. Course in Miracles says the rituals of the God of sickness are strange and very demanding. Joy is never permitted, and depression is the sign of allegiance to him. And so, and depression means that you have forsworn God. So all of these restrictions and the lowered feelings and the depression that they are known to cause. I mean, these are all the rituals of the god of sickness, and they're strange and demanding, and they're not very joyful. And we are asked to do something else. And what I've seen is from A Course in Miracles students is a real reluctance right at the time when I think it's most called for, a real reluctance to really stand firm and proud for A Course in Miracles, and just to fall right back into the thinking of the world, which says sickness is real. And I don't know what A Course in Miracles students are expecting. What are you expecting? Or what are we expecting? The disease out there to suddenly say, hey, I guess I'm not real. Oh, look, I wasn't true after all. That's not going to happen. That's the ego's voice. A Course in Miracles says the ego's voice is an hallucination. You cannot expect it to say, I am not real. So if we're waiting for disease and medical doctors to suddenly say, hey, guess what? The disease wasn't real. It was all just caused by people's minds. And we're waiting for that to happen before we start really holding firm to A Course in Miracles principles. It's not going to happen that way. That's not the way it's going to happen. The hallucination that is being manifested by the god of sickness is not all of a sudden going to say, I am not real. It's up to us to say it's not real. And that's our challenge. Course in Miracles says this, and if you get one quote that I'm saying today, please open your mind for a minute and take this in. Sickness is not of the body, but of the mind. All forms of dysfunction are merely signs that the mind has split and does not accept a unified purpose. Don't we all know that? We're A Course in Miracles students. Sickness is not of the body. It's of the mind. You want to end COVID-19? You want to protect yourself from COVID-19? You got to work with your mind. You got to forgive. You got to align yourself with who and what you truly are. And if you want to be a help in ending what appears to be sickness out there in the world, help other people do that too. Help other people to know that sickness is not of their body. Sickness is not caused by germs and viruses. It's caused by thinking. We're A Course in Miracles students. Come on. More is asked of us. I talked early on in March and April that this could be A Course in Miracles students' finest hour. This is when the world is going to need our teaching more than it ever has. And for the most part, I have not seen A Course in Miracles students rise to the challenge. And it was getting me discouraged. I talk about even some of my closer teacher colleagues. I talked to one a couple of weeks ago, and I heard them talk about the reality of disease, and it was discouraging. And I'm, if any of my other colleagues, like teachers out there in the Course in Miracles community, I'm challenging you. Step up to the fucking plate. Come on. We're A Course in Miracles students. Would you stop rehearsing the beliefs about disease? Disease is caused by the mind. Start teaching that, demonstrating that, being a witness to that. And for you all, the congregation here, okay, step up to the plate. Come on. A lot of you have been studying here with us for decades. Sickness is not of the body, but of the mind. And that should be our primary thing that we're communicating. And if we're not, and if we're communicating, the reality of sickness and the laws of sickness and how the disease is spread and how it might be prevented, we are worshiping the god of sickness. And I am not going to worship the god of sickness. I'm going to worship the God of infinite life and infinite love. So when I was discouraged, I knew that the discouragement wasn't something I was supposed to be holding on to or embracing. It seemed real out there for me, But one quote from A Course in Miracles came to help me, and this one has helped me many times in my life, and it's this one. If the way seems long, let him be content. He has decided on the direction he will take. What more was asked of him? So the way was seeming long to me. Here I am, a 40-year student of A Course in Miracles, and here's, the congregation, been studying, many of us together for decades, and other miracle students been studying for decades, other teachers been studying for decades, and, the way seems long, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I've gotten a fair amount of criticism about some of my messages, but you know what? They're the messages I am supposed to be giving because I am being true to my spiritual discipline as I perceive it. I am true to being a miracle worker. I am not going to teach the laws of sickness, and I am not going to worship the God of sickness. I'm going to worship the God of love. And my God is infinite and loving and whole and full of light and full of wellness and complete. And then after I was able to pull out a little bit from the lowered feelings, I remembered another quote from A Course in Miracles. It says, one source of perceived discouragement from which you suffer is your belief that this takes time and that the results of the Holy Spirit's teaching are far in the future. This is not so. So it's only an illusion that makes it seem like it's taking a long time. The truth is, it's not so. It's all happening now. And then I remembered all the miracles that were happening in my life. Getting my taxes, and I didn't think I was going to do it. Getting my bookkeeping done, I didn't think that was going to happen. Getting a new office worker without actually having to do almost anything. And also the world, with the World Health Organization suddenly aligning with what I was saying months ago. These are miracles happening, or they're manifestations of miracles happening. They're manifestations of shifts in perception that are happening in the mind. And I was grateful, and my mood picked up. Last night, a couple of us were celebrating the birthday of Reverend Deuce Althea. So happy birthday, Reverend Deuce Althea. And so we went out to dinner, and we went out to, an old established restaurant in San Francisco, the Balboa Cafe, and which is in the neighborhood where the office is. A nice restaurant. And so they're now seating some people indoors. And so they built this whole big outdoor seating thing. So they got this big, massive outdoor seating complex. And it was a warm, balmy night. And a lot of people were loving sitting outdoors because, you don't get these warm nights in San Francisco very often. So it's a real treat. But I told the hostess that we would take an indoor table if there was one available. And so instead of having to wait 20, 25 minutes, we waited 5 minutes, got an indoor table. And then I realized as we sat down that this was my first indoor dining experience in San Francisco in 7 months. I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago. I said the pandemic is healing. It was a real indication to me that the pandemic was healing, that they were seating people indoors. And, we had to say a little declaration. Have you been diagnosed with COVID-19? No. Have you been around anybody that's been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the last 2 weeks? No. Do you have a runny nose, a fever? No. So they asked you those 3 questions. And once you answered no to those 3 questions, they allowed you in. They said you have to keep your face coverings on until you're served some beverage and drink. And food. And so, we did that. But for the most part, it was like one of the most normal evenings I'd had in a real long time. And I really got, it is all healing. The pandemic is ending. And it was just wonderful, just joyful to me to see these sexy young women all dressed up, and to see these handsome, confident young men all dressed up and out on Saturday night dinner dates. I mean, that's a lot of what the Balboa Cafe is. It's a dinner date place. And it always has been, and it still is. And I just saw everybody having fun. Everybody was just really having fun. And I said, wow, this is joyful, regular life. And it is happening. And it just made me smile, and it made me realize you can't hold people down forever. And when they get released and when they get the opportunity, they express the joyful life that is the truth about them to the best of the ability that they have. And for these young people there, it was getting dressed up and putting on your best and being with friends and maybe a date and, having a great time. And I just bought into that. I think the four of us had a great time. And that helped a lot to pull me out of whatever residual discouragement I may have been having. So that's my message to everybody today. The way can sometimes seem long, but don't forget to focus on the miracles that are there and the miracles that are happening. And it's only our job to just keep doing our part and just to keep walking in that direction that Holy Spirit is pointing out for us to walk in. And to also remember that the length of time that it takes and the fact that everything and the healing may seem far in the future, that's just part of the illusion as well. The miracles are happening now if you choose to see them. Okay, that's my talk for today. Thank you very much.
Nel nome del Padre, Figliolo, Spirito Santo. Amen.
Such a separation.
Have you been lonely? Have you been sad? How does it feel to lose such a close one? Have you been mad?